Go on, you start.
Yeah? You do the clap, you're better at the clap. Hi, welcome to Transgender Disciple, Heaven Come Down, our vlog series. This is a little bit of a different video for us today, and I'm just going to be asking lovely Chrissy some questions. Yeah, just to switch up the content a little bit. We're over halfway through our videos now, so yeah, I wanted to take the opportunity, because you're so open and honest, for people to get to know you. So to ask questions.
Okay, fire away.
So I'll start off with an easy and complex question.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Who am I? I'm confused of Oxfordshire. No. I'm 63, married with 2 daughters, and I've had about 4 or 5 different careers in my lifetime. Most recently, I've run my own building business for 15 years, I think, ish.
Do you feel like you've reached a point in your life now where you know yourself?
Yes, definitely. I think we can go through much of our lives living to please and fulfill those around us, whether that be our parents, families, peers, community, social pressures, without even realising that we are living our lives to keep other people happy. And so I think there's a lot of, for me, there was an incredible amount of repression and suppression of my true, honest, spontaneous nature, which was caused out of fear, out of being shamed, which led to a crisis of a breakdown, really, of realising that there was 2 separate me's at war with each other, and that I somehow had to reconcile myself to the me that was ashamed, the me that lived in secret and fear, had to be acknowledged for me to become healthy and whole. So yeah, I think now I would say I understand who I am, and I'm happy with who I am, whereas perhaps prior to that breakdown I was a deeply unhappy person. Yeah. So
Have you had key moments in your life where you've stopped and there's been a change of mindset or circumstance that's really affected where your life's gone?
yes, there's a fascinating article published recently by a precious friend of mine, Jo Clifford, playwright, author, which she wrote. She was asked 10 moments that changed her life, and I thought I would love to do that. 10 moments that changed my life, but even 10 books that changed my life. And I remember, I do remember there being moments in my life that have been changed me. I think one was reading Jan Morris's book Conundrum, and Jan was born male, was in the army, worked as a reporter, and she was actually the reporter who was the first to send back news of the climbing of Everest. She sneaked a news report back, and then became an Oxford Don and transitioned in the 70s, and she wrote a book called Conundrum, which was about her physical transition and a very short autobiography, I suppose. And that shocked me to the core, that actually there was somebody who I identified with, who they seemed to be describing me and my life, and that actually physical transition was possible, and that had been something that I'd dreamed and longed for all my life. I think other moments that have I don't know why this has come to mind, but one of the most painful, traumatic experiences of my life, I was going to work one day, not long after I'd come back from India. I'd been through breakdown, was very vulnerable myself, and I was walking, I'd missed the bus, and I was walking out of the bus station in High Wycombe, and a young girl had thrown herself off the roof of the multi-storey car park, and she landed in front of me on the pavement. That was such a horrific moment. Up until that point, I'd always wanted to kill myself because of the gender dissonance within me, the battle within me. The only way out I could see was suicide. And I saw this girl hit the pavement, and it broke me. But it made me realise that actually I did have a cause, I did have something to live for. And that was to make sure that no other young kid would think of doing that, would think of taking their own life. And I guess that's why I'm so passionate about advocacy for trans youth, or for any young people. So yeah, there's two moments of entirely different nature which have turned my life right round.
Do you think that that moment made your suicidal thoughts a reality? Seeing it in someone else almost made it more of a reality than your own attempts previous to that?
Yes, yeah, it was. You can't put into words what seeing somebody die violently does to you. It's just the waste of life, the waste of a life, the pain involved. And it made me want to fight. It made me want to fight, and to want other people to live, not to end up in that place. Well, yeah, that was unexpected. Yeah.
You're coming to terms with being trans. Are you there yet, or is it something that's happened in stages? Speaking to other transgender people, it's never just a one moment you go, oh yeah, and I'm trans. It's kind of a slow process of realisation and figuring that out with your identity. How's that been for you?
I think there have been significant steps in terms of self-acceptance. I think one of the whole nature of gender dysphoria can be one of self-hatred and self-loathing. Self-acceptance is a huge part of the growth and the healing. I don't think it's ever a one-off decision to accept yourself. I think it's can be a moment by moment. And our self-acceptance is really, I don't think you can separate it. I think it's integral with our family's acceptance of us, society's acceptance of us, even culture's acceptance of us. And so the influences like the media, politics, law, all those things stack up against us. And when people are opposed to your existence, that does erode and undermine your well-being and your wholeness, even if you don't want it to. It's wearing, it's wearing, it's soul-sapping. So yeah, whilst I think I've come to terms with who I am and I accept who I am, it still can be a battle. I think initially I thought the whole being trans was it's just a curse. It's just such a serious brokenness that I can't see how any good can come from it, because you're trying to reconcile what seems to be two physical impossibilities, that your mind, your soul, your spirit leads you to believe that you are a certain type of person, and your physical body contradicts that so violently. So the reconciliation of making the two one is actually quite an incredible transformation, because the gender dysphoria actually disappears for many people and becomes almost insignificant. I live in a situation where I can't, or am not free to fully physically transition, so I live in a state of tension all the time, which has its moments of celebration. But I think even being unable to at this moment in time fully physically transition, I've come to see that actually being trans isn't a curse, that actually there is something very beautiful in it. It gives you an insight into a whole other world, and that actually it's something that I celebrate and rejoice in, and would even say that I'm grateful for, that's come a long way in 7 years since I came out.
Did you ever think you'd reach that place?
No, I think the mountain to climb was too high. I'm old, I'm knocked about and beaten. I've spent my life living outside, either as a cyclist or as a builder or in my work. I've got skin like a crocodile or a rhinoceros. I've worked all my life physically, so I have a muscular stature. So one doesn't, I don't pass as female. But I come to terms with that, and I accept that I'm just trans. I'm between I'm an in-betweenie.
See, forgive me, and it's in the most respectful way, but I disagree with you. Because we've had this conversation before. I've said I've watched hours and hours of you.
Yeah.
On
Sorry.
No, but
Yeah.
but I just think you are really beautiful. But I see that even I feel like saying that. I don't mean to diminish your feeling, because that's obviously something that's completely personal and important for you.
Yeah, I think this is something incredible about transgender people and about being trans, is that actually it reveals what's in the heart of other people. It's almost like a mirror, and some people see me and they see a man in a dress and they're repulsed. Some people see me and they only see me as a woman like they are. There's nothing contrived. That I have many female friends who accept me entirely as I am, accept me as one of the girls, one of the women, and couldn't envisage me in any other way. And that's very natural and very real. It's very genuine. There's an acceptance, and I'm absorbed into their worlds without any issues. And I don't believe for a moment they're pretending. They just accept me as I am, which is the weird reality of being transgender. That actually there is something in your spirit, there's something in your soul. I don't know what it is. That is intuitively, naturally feminine, and the makeup and the hair, the clothes, they're only an outward expression of the inner spirit, and I think people discern the inner spirit. So why some people see a man in a dress and are repulsed is understandable, because the physical reality is that I am male-bodied. So, I fully understand people who have issues, people who struggle to accept. I just wish that they would still treat us with a little bit of respect. And I find it horrific that some people still can't accept a woman who has fully physically transitioned as female. I find that I don't have words. It's too ugly.
You describe yourself as an advocate rather than a campaigner.
Yeah.
Would you say is that right?
Yes, I think advocacy, for me, I see a distinction between advocacy and an activist. I think there's a militancy to activism. I don't see myself particularly as a pride person either. It's not that I wouldn't go on pride marches, or I wouldn't attend, and I don't affirm them, or I don't see a need for them, but it's not necessarily, doesn't reflect me. In advocacy, I just see a wanting to sit with people, to be with people, to explain to people. Whereas I think sometimes activism is much more militant, it's much more aggressive. And it's not that, I think sometimes we don't need to be so as trans people, but it's just not me. I'm a peacemaker. I want to see reconciliation. I want to see understanding. I want to see wisdom. And I think often when we seek to argue or fight, what we actually do is we entrench and compound the beliefs of the very people that we want to win. It's a well-known fact with cognitive dissonance that people cannot accept things outside of their belief system. It's distressing to them. And if you threaten that, or if you force that, you push that, you actually cause them to dig in deeper. And so for me, there's actually a wisdom in being an advocate rather than an activist. If I thought activism would work, then I'd be out there waving my flags, banging my drum, knocking on doors, you know. But I actually think that the pen is mightier than the sword, and has far more long-lasting effect, and that changing society is actually done by changing one person at a time, by winning people's hearts and minds. And that's very much a relational thing, a personal thing, and so always seeking to build relationship. And I think so often activism, actually, you lose people before you've even started. I might be totally wrong, but that's my slant. So yeah.
Do you see a positive future for the trans community?
Yes, I do. I very much so, because when you look at, disability, physical disability within society, if you go back to when I was at school as opposed to when you were at school, the language, the behaviour and the attitudes towards people who were disabled or in any way, mentally or physically, it was vile. And disabled people didn't have hardly any rights. There was very little awareness, and although they more often were looked after within their communities, there was so much stigma. Whereas now, you look at disability, you take the Paralympics, it's a phenomenon, and we celebrate disability, quite rightly so. And that has been a very tangible and dramatic change in society, that society has moved from stigmatising disability to celebrating it. And it's not that trans people are disabled, we are different, but I believe that there will be a time when we are celebrated for the gifts that we bring to church or to the table or to society, to the arts, to literature, to wherever, to creativity, to wherever we live and work. So yeah, I think there's going to be an acceptance, and I certainly hope for that and believe in that. Otherwise I'd be in despair.
And finally, just because this is something I've always wanted to ask, why the name Chrissy Sheversit?
Okay, Chrissy Sheversit. As I mentioned this in the book, that I never had a name for my inner self, the person that I knew I was. But when I realised I was coming out, and that coming out was inevitable, I needed a name. And my surname, my family name, is French in origin, and so I really wanted to find a French name, and I couldn't find one that sat right, that fitted. And then I remembered a very precious friend and woman who has the same surname, who actually delivered both of our children, and was present in their birth, a midwife. And she's such a beautiful character, and I could only thought, well, it's a lovely way to honour her, but also the beauty that she brought into our lives of our two daughters. It was an acknowledgement of that. So that was my surname, and then it was really a matter of finding something that sounded, that rolled off the tongue. So you have Chrissy Sheversit. So yeah, that's my name and why.
Well, it's a very beautiful name for a very beautiful person.
Thank you.
Thank you for being so open and honest and speaking about things that I know are so important. And I'm grateful to you for speaking about them.
Good. Well, thank you.
Yeah. It's odd to think now we're not that far from the book coming.
No.
How are you feeling about the book coming out?
I'm really excited, I'm daunted, and one is, I'm really anxious that it is successful, not in terms of monetary terms or being well known, but in terms of its impact on people's lives, of changing people's lives, changing people's hearts and minds. The biggest reason for writing it is to say to people who are out there who are broken and hurting, you can come through this, we can come through this. There's a way out, there's a way through. And my story, that the miracle of me sitting here, is to say that it's possible, that it doesn't matter how far back you've come from, you can come through. So, yeah, I really want the book out there, and I want it to do well because I want it to change people's lives. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for speaking.
Well, thank you for filming and being patient and gracious.
Very polite to each other. Thank you so much, and I think that's a pretty good end to
Thank you, Katie.
this video. Thank you.
See you all next week.
Thanks so much. Take care.